Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're enjoying this little HEX pumperoni that we got going in the markets right now. In this video, I'm going to talk about what a lot of people are probably going to mess up, and I don't want you to mess this up when PuseChain launches. It has to do with liquidity bonding and just basically your general swapping strategy when going from the Ethereum ecosystem into the PuseChain ecosystem. So if you're new here, for those that don't know, there's going to be what's called a bridge on day one when PuseChain launches, whenever that may be. And this bridge is basically the bridge between the Ethereum world and the PuseChain world. And obviously, as we already know, there's going to be HEX that lives on Ethereum native, and then there's going to be HEX native to the PuseChain. So two different versions of HEX. The supply is copied on both chains. Now, what do I think a lot of people are going to do when the actual chain launches? Well, we all kind of expect people to probably value PuseChain's version of HEX a little bit more than the Ethereum version of HEX. At least that's just speculation, and it might not happen, but I think that people are going to value the coin that's native to the chain with cheaper and lower fees. The one that's faster, the one that's got a better user experience. And so I think the migration is going to be happening where people are going to be going from Ethereum into PuseChain. And even though that doesn't mean logically that the Ethereum version of HEX should be worth less than the PuseChain version of HEX, I think people's mental framework is going to perceive it that way. And that's kind of what I'm speculating on. But now, is this a bad thing? Absolutely not. Because even though the price of EHEX may drop, the price of PHEX will shoot way up because it's starting at nothing, right? It's starting at zero. The only way it can go is up. And so I'm speculating personally that the sum of the two parts, price-wise, will be greater than the price of the single HEX that existed pre-fork. Does that make sense? So if HEX is 10 cents and the chain splits, we could see EHEX going down to maybe 1 or 2 pennies, but we could see PHEX shooting up to, 9 or 10 pennies again. And then obviously, guys, what's 10 cents plus that 2 cents EHEX that you have on the other chain? It's 12 cents. It's worth more than your HEX was pre-fork at, sitting around 10 cents. Generally speaking, guys, 2 coins are better than 1, and both of them are going to have a price. So I'm not going to be quick to dump any of my EHEX, really. I'm going to be holding and staking the majority. That's because most of mine is locked up in a ladder anyway. But with the liquid stuff I do plan on providing liquidity, and I can see how a lot of people might be wanting to get rid of their EHEX in exchange for PHEX. Now, there's a better way to do this than actually selling down your EHEX for USDC and then rebuying it on the new chain. You really just need to swap directly, and that's what I really want to get across. A lot of people are going to mess that up. What I think a lot of people are going to do is, I think a lot of people, when the chain splits and they have all this big bag of Ethereum HEX over here on the left, I think some people might be kind of silly and cash it out for USDC or US dollars and then try to rebuy back on the PuseChain network. Now, this is really gas inefficient, number one, for you, because to sell on Ethereum right now, to sell on Uniswap costs an arm and a leg, so you're going to be paying, a $20 to $50 gas fee just to cash that out. And then you're going to have to bridge coins into PuseChain some other way, either bridging in USDC or going directly via a fiat on-ramp or something like that, and then buying it all over again. And also, on top of all this, you're hurting the price of your Ethereum bag of HEX, when, guys, you can actually maintain the price of your Ethereum HEX. Let's call it EHEX for now, right? You can actually help keep that price up just by simply bridging it directly. And if you don't want to be a liquidity provider, fine, but you can swap your EHEX directly for PHEX. And in that scenario, technically you don't push the price down because you never actually sold that HEX for US dollars. Now, I'm assuming that we're talking about US dollar terms, right? Technically you push the price down versus PHEX. But as long as we're only trading in between that ratio, in between these two coins directly, you're cutting out this middleman USDC, you're actually defending the price a little bit, and it's going to help your bags, your gas costs, and everybody else's obviously too. So we all should be doing this, right? Whether or not you're going to be a liquidity provider or just a swapper, you're going to want to go directly to pulseramp.com, and I don't want to see anybody making this critical mistake right here. Okay, guys, don't do this. It's very just unnecessary, very silly, and a lot of people might. Now, I've been asked a lot about liquidity providing in general, guys, and what is liquidity providing and how can you earn from it? Well, it's going to be pretty simple, actually, and there's going to be a big opportunity to make an incentive token, INC token, on the new PulseX trading platform when it comes out. I think one of the safest pairs that I want to see happen on PulseX, and one of the pairs with the most activity, because it's going to be mostly Hexicans, using PulseChain at first. We're the early adopters. Everybody watching right now, you're an early adopter of PulseChain. And so a lot of you guys already have HEX. If you don't, well, you might want to think about it. Anyway, so let's say this is how liquidity pools work on automated market makers. I have previous videos about this. Check out the link above if you want to learn more and do a deeper dive. But basically, in an automated market maker, there's two sides of liquidity, and people can put up as much liquidity as they want on either side. Let's say that in the liquidity pool for EHEX, PHEX, for that pair, let's say there's 10 million EHEX and 1 million PHEX in the main PuseChain PulseX liquidity pool. Well, if the ratio of EHEX to PHEX is 10, that basically just means that you get 10 EHEX for every PHEX, or the market, for example, is valuing PHEX at 10 times higher than EHEX, which is fine, and we might actually see some kind of ratio like this. It's probably not going to be 1-to-1, in my opinion, okay? It's going to be some ratio. And guys, really simply put, so if PHEX were to double in price from, let's say, 50 cents to $1, and then theoretically nobody traded EHEX at all or touched the liquidity at all, obviously in reality things are more complex, but let's just say everybody just left EHEX alone and people only cared about PHEX. That's an extreme example, but I think people are going to tend to care more about PHEX. But if PHEX doubles in price and the primary liquidity pairs are bonded together in a 10-to-1 ratio, in this example, then EHEX doubles in price too. So EHEX, guess what? That's just went from 5 cents to 10 cents. All because there's so much liquidity locked in these pairs. And the more liquidity we can get in these pairs, the more we can stabilize the prices against each other and back them. As the price moves up and down in PulseHEX, it acts as kind of a whale for EHEX to ride on its belly. EHEX is like the fish riding on the whale's belly as PHEX goes to the moon. And remember, guys, because of the ratio in the liquidity pairs, in this example is still 10 EHEX still equals 1 PHEX, obviously the price of EHEX doubles. But in reality, like I was saying, things are more complex. People can be adding and removing liquidity all day, which they do. It's a very chaotic system, meaning we can't predict it exactly right, but these are the underlying principles that simply make it a fact, like mathematically, that basically what I'm trying to describe is Hart's Law. I've got another video depicting Hart's Law right above here. Click on that if you want to learn even more. Hart's Law basically proves that in automated market makers, price movements are bonded by their primary liquidity pair. Now, in most cases in this bear market, that primary liquidity pair is either Ethereum or US dollar coin. But if we can bond something if we can bond A in terms of token B, and basically that means that A is primarily priced in B. So if B goes up, A gets a free ride along with it. So what am I thinking is actually going to happen in kind of speculation, but reasonable logical speculation? Well, I think we're going to reach parity in percentage movements, but not necessarily price. People talk all the time about when are we going to see parity between EHEX and PHEX. And I have to distinguish here that there's parity between the percentage movements up and down daily, and then there's price parity. Now, people are speculating, some people, that the price of EHEX and PHEX will actually end up being the same. And that might happen. Because this is so unprecedented, I don't actually know if there's going to be price parity, but I'm reasonably confident that even if there's not price parity, it would be great if there was, but I think there's at least going to be parity in the percentage movements. For example, if PHEX goes up 10% in one day, it might be reasonable to assume that EHEX would also get dragged up 9.5%, based on how tightly they're bonded together. Now, guys, here's what I really want to leave you with. Just consider doing this if you think you can handle it and if you think you can get your head around it. Providing liquidity on this EHEX-PHEX pair is very important because, like I just mentioned, if we back the value of this pair, guys, the prices can move in tandem with one another, and your EHEX can actually hold some of its value. So don't be just dumping it directly for US dollars and then just buying PHEX. Either swap directly or, even more importantly, if you feel safe doing this, be a liquidity provider, especially if you're a larger holder, because not only, one, can you earn INC token, but two, you can back the value of both of your coins and basically just help everybody win together, rather than like shooting yourself in the foot, basically. So it's very simple, guys. It's more efficient to trade X for Y, not X for Q for Y. So don't go off selling your EHEX for US dollar coin. If you want to sell it for PHEX, do the direct swap. It's very simple. Just do not make this mistake, please. And this is going to benefit you, not only because you're going to save gas fees, but you're also going to get yourself a better price by actually not shooting yourself in the foot before you buy. In my opinion, selling EHEX for USDC is kind of like slapping yourself in the face before you buy a cheeseburger from McDonald's, right? Like, why wouldn't you just buy the cheeseburger? Why would you want to just slap yourself in the face and look like a real silly goose? You know what I mean? Don't do that. So on top of all this stuff, you're also protecting the price of both coins because you're tying them together and you're helping them stay bonded with one another in that same liquidity pool. Again, whether or not you're swapping only or you want to take the more advanced liquidity providing route. So liquidity providers, one quick message for you as well. Be prepared for what I think will be kind of a mass rush of people trying to swap EHEX into PHEX. So if you are a liquidity provider, what you might want to mentally prepare yourself for is that if you put a bunch of PHEX and a bunch of EHEX into the liquidity pool, you're probably going to end up with a lot more EHEX and a lot less PHEX. Okay, get ready for that. Now, this could be scary, right? Because you're saying, oh, why would I want to own less of PHEX, which I think is going to be worth way more? Well, if we all do this together, the more liquidity, like I said, in this pool, the more the price can be defended. And you actually don't have to be so upset with having a big bag of EHEX, because it will have such a hefty price and it will be tied to the price of PHEX, which you're also helping to pump. I hope this made sense. I hope you guys learned something. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're new to crypto, course in the description below. I'll see you on the next video.